right, you can see these are, to the right, you can see a map that shows the 5 study areas that we focused on. And so these are places that we identified as having a high concentration of these land uses or places that would attract more vulnerable road users. And at the end of the project, which is now, we're recommending safety improvements, mostly quick build that are specific to each of these study areas. So the things in the quick build toolkit include crosswalk improvements, traffic calming measures, things like that can be implemented fairly quickly. The final improvements have been selected with feedback from public outreach, and they will be designed and implemented at select locations. And this project is funded through our neighborhood transportation program. So every 5 years, each district supervisor gets about $700,000 of sales tax funds, and they can choose to spend it on projects such as this one. So for this project, we're using some of that $700,000 for planning, which is this stage of the project. And then we also have some funding set aside for implementation. So that includes detailed design and construction. I'll quickly recap what we heard in summer 2024 when we did the first round of outreach for this project. In the summer, we conducted an online survey. We had a virtual town hall. We did some in-person pop-up events at the Marina Middle School, libraries, churches, healthcare facilities, and we also did presentations to community organizations that had requested them. And we heard broadly that speeding, distracted driving, and lack of traffic enforcement were major issues across all of the study areas. And we also heard more specific feedback on certain street intersections or street segments where people had experienced safety or access challenges. So we really used what we heard in summer 2024 to kind of hone in on what locations to focus these safety improvements. And I mentioned this before, but we're really targeting quick build improvements. These are things that are improvements that are reversible, adjustable, and can be installed relatively quickly. And examples of these include high visibility crosswalks, painted safety zones, traffic calming, and parking and loading adjustments. So it's really meant to be things that are fairly simple and quick to implement. So this is just like an overview of the 6 different locations where we're proposing quick build improvements and what the proposals are. And then the next slides will go into more detail on each of these. The first improvement that we're proposing is at the Bay Laguna intersection in the Marina. In the first round of outreach, we heard that there's a high violation rate for the no right on red restriction for this right turn here, if you can see my cursor. So what we're proposing is better signage to implement something like this LED blank out, what MTA calls a blank out sign. And this has been shown to improve the adherence to the no right on red restriction. We also heard in outreach that there's kind of a desire, there's no crosswalk on the east side of the intersection at this time. And there's a number of reasons for that. And to study this would probably take a more comprehensive study of the intersection. So in light of that, to kind of reduce the amount of crossing that is happening now, we're proposing to add signage to just reinforce that there is no pedestrian crossing on this side of the intersection. And we're also proposing striping to enhance safety and visibility for cars who are making this left turn. So these 3 improvements are all quick build. We're also proposing a long-term recommendation for this intersection, which is to study a full intersection redesign to better balance access for people walking, cycling, taking transit, and driving. And one of the things that could be explored in that intersection redesign is how to add this crosswalk on the right, the east side of the intersection. The long-term recommendation doesn't have funding at this time. It's just a recommendation of our study, and we've identified some funding sources in our final report, but the long-term recommendation is not something that would come out of the previously allocated neighborhood transportation funds. In Pacific Heights, what we heard is that there's high traffic speeds, pedestrian conflicts, and visibility challenges, particularly near the health facility on Clay and Webster and Lafayette Park. So what we're proposing is to better study the balance of passenger and goods loading. So that's the allocation of white and yellow curb at the Clay-Webster intersection, and the hopes that that can reduce the amount of double parking that's going on there now. And we're also proposing traffic calming on the streets adjacent to Lafayette Park. So in a previous, if you have seen this presentation before, in a previous iteration, we had also proposed traffic calming on Webster Street, but following community feedback, we decided that the traffic speeds are fairly low on the segment anyways, and instead that people had asked why there wasn't traffic calming on Laguna instead. So that is one change that we've made relatively recently. The exact number, so this is just illustrative where these traffic calming devices are placed. The exact type, which it could be one of these three options, speed hump, speed cushion, or speed table, the exact type and the number and location of these traffic calming devices will not be determined until the detailed design phase, which I can explain a little bit later. In the Anza Vista residential neighborhood, this is near, the target is here, so if you can kind of picture where this is. We're also proposing traffic calming. There's a lot of pedestrian activity because of the high school and also high traffic speeds and a lot of cut through traffic of people trying to get to the target. So we're proposing traffic calming measures on these residential streets. And again, the exact type and number would not be determined until detailed design. Also in the Anza Vista neighborhood at the intersection of Geary and Masonic, we heard in outreach that pedestrians and cyclists have difficulty navigating this intersection. We also collected pedestrian and cyclist counts, and we did video observations to see what cyclist behavior is here. And what we noticed is a lot of cyclists who are making this left turn are having trouble navigating to the bike lane on Masonic. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that the entrance is a pretty sharp 90-degree turn. And so I think cyclists who are not familiar with this area will miss it and end up on the wrong side of the bike lane. So what we're proposing is to round this island and kind of shave off some of that area to make the entrance more apparent, and also add markings such as these the green sharrows to help guide people to where that bike lane is. Some other pedestrian improvements, obviously this intersection is really complicated. There's a lot of competing uses here. But one small thing we could do to enhance pedestrian safety is to install lead pedestrian intervals. And that gives pedestrians a few second head start before the signal turns green, so that they're able to get into the intersection and increase visibility. The last two recommendations are more identifying locations for potential improvements rather than implementing improvements themselves. So in Presidio Heights, we heard that a desire for an improved bike network and more secure bike parking to encourage people to bike more and kind of reduce concerns about theft. And so we're really focusing this improvement on the elementary school and the medical facilities in this area. And the next step would be for the SFMTA bike parking program to look into where it would be appropriate to install more bike parking. So this could look like bike corrals or more secure, longer term secure bike parking options such as bike lockers and bike hangers. So just to clarify, this recommendation is not to install the bike parking, but rather to look at what locations it would be most appropriate to do the bike parking. And then the last recommendation is in the Cathedral Hill neighborhood. This area has a lot of seniors. There's a lot of senior citizen facilities, a church that draws a lot of pedestrians, and a CPMC facility. So what we're proposing here is to install painted safety zones. So these are places that kind of both increase the turning radius of cars, slowing down turning speeds and increasing pedestrian safety and visibility. We've identified 5 potential intersections that have had a higher number of turn-based collisions and confirmed these locations also in outreach. And the next step would be for SFMTA to look into the feasibility, if there's enough space basically to install the painted safety zones. So the next steps for this study are to present the final report to our community advisory committee and to our board for adoption. The CAC meeting is at the end of February and the board meeting is in the beginning of March. In late 2026, SFMTA would begin the detailed design, seeking legislative and other approvals for the measures that are going into construction, and construction would start sometime in 2027. So that's all the presentation that I had for today. So I'm happy to take any questions and happy also to go back to any of the specific proposals if you have questions on those.
Maybe just to start, Alex, and because I saw one question in the chat about looking at the overall map. So maybe if you could go to that initial slide where you've got that overall map, that might be helpful.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't even see that there were questions in the chat. Sorry about that.
No worries. No worries. Yeah.
Catherine, if you want to come off mute and ask any other questions or let us know if this map is clear or visible to you, please do let Rachel and Alex know. Okay, it doesn't sound like she has any follow-up there yet. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks, Alex and Rachel, for both presenting. Why don't we open it up to Q&A, live Q&A, and then we can go back to any slides that folks may have clarification questions on. Looks like we have Remy and Don. Don, why don't you kick us off?
Okay. In viewing these things, I have two observations. I didn't hear anything about the impact on vehicular traffic and how much it would disrupt existing vehicular traffic flow.
Yeah, so maybe we could quickly go through each of them. This one, the Bay Laguna is not really anticipated to impact flow at all. It's more, this no right on red restriction already exists. So it's more reinforcing that and increasing compliance with this, with something that already exists here. The traffic calming measures are all intended to slow traffic speeds.
So a negative impact on traffic flow.
Yes, you could. I don't know how it would impact flow per se, but it would impact speeds. Yes. And in this intersection, what we're proposing is not quite, it's mostly markings, like pavement markings and wayfinding. There's nothing that would change the flow of traffic. It's possible that the lead pedestrian intervals would, well, let me check with SFMTA about this. I think the cycle time remains the same. Or Rachel, if you have an idea of how this would impact traffic flow. But my understanding is that it's minimal, the lead pedestrian intervals.
So there's been a study?
The lead pedestrian intervals are something that SFMTA has implemented pretty often across the city. So they would have information about any traffic impacts that come from that.
Who is that, please?
The SFMTA.
Thank you.
And then these two proposals are not, are basically proposals for further study rather than implementing anything specifically.
Okay.
Can I ask a question about the Presidio Heights one, since that's my area?
Yes, go ahead.
For starters, those aren't medical buildings anymore. They're going to become condos and housing, if you're not aware.
Yes, it's something that at the time that we had made this map, it wasn't clear yet. So we can update that, certainly.
And how many people said they needed bike parking in this area? I mean, I drive down this way all the time. I don't see very many bikes, and it's certainly not an area where people would in my mind, need to park their bike. Do you have any information about what how many people really said they needed a bike corral, bike locker, or bike hanger?
I can check that. I don't have the number offhand. But again, this is something that would require further study. So we're not proposing anything that's implementation at this stage. It's more just suggesting that SFMTA looks more into this option.
What could have been two people that said they'd like to have something for their bike, and you guys would spend money on a study?
That's not how we would do it. That's not how we would conduct the outreach. But the SFMTA already has a bike parking program, so we're not recommending to allocate more money to that program just for these requests to kind of fall into their queue of like a program that already exists. And yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
Well, I still don't have an idea as to what basis you have for even studying this. How many how this seems to be a priority in District 2, and yet I assume that there were a lot of other areas brought up that didn't make the cut.
So I think that's a good maybe time to look at the map. So it's true that we wanted the recommendations to be spread geographically throughout the district. So not just to focus only on one part, but really to look at district-wide improvements. So that's, when you look at this map, that's kind of why we tried to spread out our recommendations at just not to make it seem like we're spending all the money in one place. So there were a number of different factors that went into deciding what these final recommendations were. Some part of it is what we'd heard in outreach. A large part of it, I would say, is what we heard in outreach. But there's also a desire to kind of make sure the money is being spent equitably across the district.
Even if the issues aren't equitable, I mean, if you have big safety problems in one area, it seemed to me spend all the money there.
And this is just one project happening in District 2. This is something that came through the supervisor's neighborhood transportation program funds. So the scope of that was pretty narrow. The desire was to look at places specifically that are drawing more vulnerable road users. So that already kind of focuses in on schools, medical facilities, places of worship, things like that. And then also the desire to want to spread it evenly throughout the district. So there's many different types of safety projects that we do and that SFMTA does. And I think maybe it's good to keep in mind that the scope of this project is what it is. And it may be narrower than what some people have interest in, but that's like, maybe we can just keep that in the back of our minds that this is specifically about locations that are drawing children, seniors, people with disabilities. So
where would we have access to the outreach, that, for example, resulted in you putting the Presidio Heights recommendations?
Yeah, so the outreach summary is going to be in our final report, which we'll share to our board next month.
So it hasn't been published yet.
Right, that's right.
Thank you, John. It's a lot of good, juicy questions there, and appreciate the engagement. Let's move to Remy real quick.
Hello, hi. I have a question regarding the right on red. I know the cities, not only in this district, but throughout the cities, put right on reds, and just noticed, driving around town, that really slows things up, and especially on some of the arterials. So I'm wondering, if that is the right move, because the drivers are getting more impatient, and then we often see, they're turning into the pedestrians, which are in the crosswalk on the right. Whereas if they had been able to make a right in red, the pedestrian would be at a red light, in that same direction and not crossing the crosswalk. So, I think it's making it more dangerous across the cities from what I've seen. And then, we're looking at trying to calm traffic speeds on the arterials. I think the SFMTA and the CTA really need to look at, timing the lights so that people are encouraged to drive not more than the speed limit. And if they do, they come to a stop instead of moving smoothly, without stopping on the arterials. I mean, we have some of that like on Franklin and Goff, Fell Oak, but many of the other streets don't. Like Geary, sometimes you see all the lights turn green at once and red at once. And that Masonic's a little better, but I've also seen on Lombard Street, the lights turn green at once and red. And it encourages people to just, accelerate really quickly, get up to freeway speed to try to hit as many green lights as possible, rather than having them float. So, what is the CTA and the MTA doing to kind of fix those problems? Those are very dangerous problems, and if you get in
Yeah.
a T-bone collision at 60 miles an hour, you're going to get seriously hurt, if not killed.
Yeah, I think those are all good points that you're making. For this no turn on red restriction, I don't believe it's related to the expansion of no turn on red in the downtown area. I think that was a separate, more recent initiative. My understanding is that this no turn on red has been here much longer. So I kind of want to think of those two things separately. I think the comments that you have about the no turn on red restrictions more broadly is outside the scope of this study. What this recommendation is proposing is merely to increase compliance with something that already exists. So that's kind of what I would say about that. Your second question about the signal timing, these green waves that are happening, I think that's a good point. We also received a lot of feedback on Lombard, and that's something that they've looked at there, is how to adjust the signal timing to reduce the amount of behavior that you're describing, which is people trying to catch up to the green and try to make it onto that green wave. Yeah.
Thanks, Remy.
Thank you.
I sort of like the green waves. It keeps traffic moving. But interesting other point of view there.
Actually, I was talking about when they don't have a green wave and all the lights change green at once instead of doing a wave. And that encourages, jackrabbit starts, drag racing type of behavior to try to make as many lights before they all change red at once.
Right.
And that's a problem in Geary and Lombard I've seen. And also I think on Sunset.
Got it.
19th on District 4.
Got it. Let's go to the chat real quick. Switch it up. I see a couple others patiently awaiting. Thank you so much for the patience. But in the chat, Jerry asks, since the package was originally proposed by Supervisor Stephanie, has Supervisor Cheryl or his staff had any further input?
Yes, we've been in communication with the District 2 office over this. The staff member we've been working with actually worked for both Supervisor Stephanie and now Supervisor Cheryl. So we've been working with the same staff member. And so he's heard these updates. Lorenzo, he's been at other meetings as well.
Awesome. And I think we have someone on Supervisor Cheryl.
Sorry, I just want to chime in here. This is Lauren Chung from Supervisor Cheryl's office. Lorenzo wasn't able to make it, so I am filling in. So I have less information than he would have, but just wanted to be here as well.
Thanks, Lauren. Why don't we go to Barbara next?
Thank you. Thank you for the information. A question comes to mind. How many people actually participated in this study in the public, and how did you communicate it?
Yeah, so in the first round of outreach in the summer, we had probably about 200 people through the survey, town halls, and various pop-up events. For the survey, we publicize it through our social media, through our newsletter, on our website. We, when outreach launches, we share the launch dates in our public board meetings. And we also, I remember actually this last summer, we posted flyers with a link to the survey in different, I think I went up and down Chestnut, up and down Fillmore, and posting flyers, handing them out at coffee shops and things like that. And the supervisor also sent it out through his newsletter, or through her newsletter, I guess, at that time. The pop-up events, we selected places that were through, like in all the different study areas, so throughout the district, and we just set up a table outside and approached people, asking them for comment. In this round of outreach, we've, let me double check how many this is. I think we've done these types of presentations to 5 or 6 community organizations and neighborhood associations. We did a pop-up in the Anza Vista neighborhood at their block party. And we had a survey, but we were more prioritizing these in kind of in-person events and presentations.
Great, thank you.
Am I next?
Yeah, Marie, hop in.
Alex, thanks. I have a couple of questions, but following on Barbara's question, how many people total have participated in the outreach? How many community members?
I would say about 200 have responded to the survey in both phases, or that we've, met with at meetings or pop-ups.
And is there, I missed the beginning of this, so maybe you shared it. Is there somewhere we can access the survey information? The survey results?
Like the survey the survey results. That'll be published in our final report, which we are taking to the board in March.
Okay, and so is the survey still open?
The survey is not open, no.
How long was it open?
It was open for, I believe, 6 weeks.
And when was that?
Let me double check. It was last fall. It would have been September, October timeframe, I believe, but I can double check the exact dates.
Okay, thank you. The other question I wanted to ask, I did also want to agree. I think the green wave is really smart. It keeps traffic moving, and the all on at once and all off at once is just not as functional. But I wanted to ask a question about the speed bumps. I have a bad back because I was in an accident a few years ago, and every one of those it does not matter how slow you are going, it hurts my back. What is with the proliferation of these speed bumps all over the city, and how easy is it to get them, and is that really the best idea?
So I can give you the background. It's a little bit outside of the scope of this study, but I can tell you what I know, and Rachel, you can feel free to chime in as well. My understanding is that SFMTA has two ways that they install speed bumps or speed humps. One is looking at traffic speeds. So looking at where traffic speeds are high and how to slow down speeds. Traffic calming is one of the many ways SFMTA tries to reduce speeding. And the other way is through the residential traffic calming program, which is under revision right now. But this previously was a way that residents could request speed humps or traffic calming in their neighborhood. And I believe there was a signature requirement. So they needed to, similar to ballot measures, I guess, which is trying to get signatures from people who support them. That's my knowledge of how speed humps get installed. But I don't know, Rachel, if you know any differently about the traffic calming program from SFMTA.
Oh, sure. Yes, that's correct about the two ways two paths for considering, traffic calming interventions. The traffic calming toolkit is just an industry best practice. So there's at the federal level, sort of the transportation engineering industry puts out general guidance for U.S. roadways, right? Because they are, partially regulated at that level, for your typical best practices toolkit, for things like traffic calming. And then there are also state versions of those kind of best practices. So it's their quick build toolkit is a combination of state and national industry best practices.
Okay. And when you mentioned the residential program and getting signatures and such, is that still in effect? You said you were reviewing it, it was under review. And
Yeah,
what
that
was the
program is,
signature? Oh, go ahead.
yeah, that program is, that I was just explaining that that's how the program used to work. Right now, I think SFMTA is in the process of redesigning it. And they have a backlog of those kinds of requests. But I would group this study, which is also kind of like a more outreach driven approach, within the residential traffic calming program. So there's like the approach where SFMTA looks at speeds, and then there's the approach where requests come out of outreach, whether that be projects such as this one, studies such as this one, or more direct requests from residents where a group of neighbors is asking SFMTA directly for a speed hump in their neighborhood.
Okay, and what do you know what the signature requirement was?
I don't know off the top of my head. I would imagine it's on SFMTA's website, but I'm sorry, I don't know the number. Rachel, I don't know if you know.
I actually don't, like, whether it's a majority or a 2/3 or something like that. Yeah, it's a good question. We'll find that out.
Okay, and for some place like Anza Vista, where you showed it's, you're going to be throwing down a whole bunch of these. Is that it sounds like that is coming from bucket number one, not the residential program. It's where you're seeing some sort of speed issue. Has that even been shared with the people who live there, who are going to be going through these speed bumps?
So it
all day, every day?
It is coming from the residential program, because it's coming out of this study where we conducted outreach. And with Anza Vista neighborhood, we sent mailers to every apartment, every house in that neighborhood, and we went to their annual block party, and we engaged with probably, I would say, close to 50 of the neighbors there. So we've done, I would say, pretty extensive outreach with that community, because we know that it is, as you said, installing quite a number of them. So we've sent mailers to all of the neighbors there. Is it okay if I go, because I see there's a bunch of questions in the chat. Is it okay if I go to those first, or I know Catherine's also had her hand up for a while, and I'm just trying to be mindful of time, that we have 20 minutes left.
Yep. Why don't we go to Catherine? She's had her hand up for a while, and then I'll
Okay, thank you. My question is quick. I didn't see Galileo High School, Bay Street, Van Ness in that study at all. And you talked about that this study was based on schools and playgrounds. That's a huge problem here.
Yeah, so let me just go back to the map. It could be because there just wasn't a high enough concentration of other locations in that area. That's something that if there have been safety issues near there, we can include that as like a recommended place of further study in our final report. But at the time that we were setting these study areas, we were really looking for places with a high concentration, and also places that haven't had recent improvements. I know Van Ness has received a lot of improvements recently, and that might have been one of the reasons that we didn't include it. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, it answers the question. But I feel like Galileo High School area doesn't get addressed often, and it's a huge complex, lots of kids. Van Ness is high traffic. The no turn on left doesn't seem to be being followed very carefully. So it's a dangerous intersection, especially when school's being let out.
Yeah, we can certainly add that as a location in our final report, just that for future studies to look more closely into that area.
Thanks, Catherine. Moving to the chat, it looks like Leslie asked, can we have drastically improved street lighting in D2 and throughout SF?
That is, it's it is outside the scope of this study. Rachel, I don't know actually where street lighting requests, where they go through, if it's through SFMTA or elsewhere. But Leslie, I can also follow up. If you leave your contact information, I can follow up and let you know if there's a place where you can request that or who the appropriate person would be.
Yeah, just having this is one of my street pedestrian level street lighting is there's no one agency responsible for that, right? So it is often done as part of a larger sort of street improvement project that includes lots of dimensions. That's typically how that happens. But we can get you a better suggestion.
Awesome. Thanks, Rachel. Next question in the chat, Dawn asked, does SFCTA have any control influence on traffic cameras and enforcement? If so, the Lombard part of 101 has been requested to use this already existing traffic control several times by local organized groups to put in traffic cameras to control one of the most dangerous streets in SF. We have been ignored so far.
So so the answer is no. SFCTA does not have any control or influence over traffic cameras and enforcement. Enforcement is not part of our agency's responsibilities. We have funded and supported the automated speed enforcement pilot. My understanding of that pilot is that it required state legislative approval, and based on population size, San Francisco can have up to 33 speed cameras. So all 33 of those speed cameras have been installed. So for further expansion, it would require legislative approval, or to make the pilot into a permanent program would require legislative approval. That's something that we can support and we can advocate for, but that's a little bit outside of our responsibilities.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to thank you for that.
Oh, okay.
Thanks, Don. I'll skip my question for now. Barbara asked, does all of this include slow streets and if they are needed? Barbara,
This study, yeah.
Or do you know what she's referencing?
Yes, so this study is separate from the Slow Streets program.
That is separate then. Okay. Next question from Alicia. Why are the speed bumps cut up in the middle? It encourages people to drive into the middle of the street to avoid the hump.
So Alicia, oh, and I see this other, yes. So Alicia, what you're talking about is the speed cushion option here, and Barbara is correct. It's for emergency vehicles for safety. So all of these recommendations need to go through the fire department for approval. And so that's why this decision gets made later in detailed design.
Got it. Thanks for the clarification there, Alex. I guess we can ask my question real quick. Is there speed data for Laguna? I've checked speed data on Webster on the SFCTA dashboard, which is the closest parallel street to Laguna. And I saw that average speeds in the month of January were still below the speed limit.
So we didn't collect speed data as part of this project because, as I had mentioned before, there's two ways that SFMTA does traffic calming, and this is in that second bucket of community outreach. So that's the reason that there's no speed data collected.
Got it. I would also just note in this intersection on Laguna at the park between Washington and Sacramento, it's a pretty short intersection, so it's challenge. I feel like it's naturally challenge. I know there's like a steep incline, but it's naturally short, so people can't speed because there's a stop sign within 3 football fields, so to speak. And I think going downhill that would create a little bit of whiplash for drivers. something.
Yeah, so the relative grades of the streets, and those are all things that SFMTA would look into more closely in the detailed design phase.
Got it. Okay. It'd be interesting to find out like what goes into the study during that next phase if it does get to that point. So I guess we'll follow up with MT on that.
Yeah, that would be more appropriate to follow up with MTA because they'll be leading the detailed design and getting approvals and everything.
Okay. Remy asked in the chat, will SFMTA add signage to the speed cameras to warn people to slow down, which is the purpose of the camera or cameras? This is also required by law for the tickets.
This I would need to follow up with SFMTA about. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. But I can, Remy, again, if you leave your contact information, I can follow up with you directly. Or Griff, if you want. I think there were a couple of people that I said I would follow up with, but I don't have their emails. So if you could just share them with me.
Looks like Alicia had a comment. She must have been referencing my comment. I think I was referring to Laguna, not Octavia, but good to know. We have about 10 more minutes left. Do other folks have other recommendations, suggestions, questions, comments? The time is yours.